I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumit Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy, and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. In this video today, I'm talking about life being a paradox, and why do so many spiritual teachers contradict themselves? Okay? So first of all, I just want to give a brief shout out. I have a song actually called Paradox. If some of you have watched it, some of you haven't watched it, highly recommend that. Go check it out. I'll link it in the description. Life is a paradox, you know. Big ego, but I'm so humble. I act broke, but my money long. I save money by spending money. I'm still right even when I'm wrong. Okay? This is how the lyrics goes. Every single lyric is a contradiction. Start to understand that life is a paradox. Okay? We live in a world of duality. And so with this duality, you have to understand that spiritual teachers aren't attached to this duality. They're at the choice point. So of course, a lot of their information is going to be contradictory. Now there's a lot of fake gurus, charlatans, people who propagate pseudoscience out there too. So we must be aware of this, at the same time understanding that someone who's practicing Zen or someone who's on the spiritual path can often contradict themselves because they recognize themselves as multidimensional beings. They recognize that they're giving information to people at different levels of consciousness. So one paradigm might be that stay away from fear, it's an illusion. It's just trying to control you. Another way could be that, hey, fear is there to actually protect you from danger, and so forth. Now, both of these can simultaneously exist at the same time. That is a paradox, right? A paradox is two ideas or concepts or things that can simultaneously exist at the same time, but contradict each other at the same time. So, one spiritual teacher might tell you, ground yourself. Another spiritual teacher might say, go out of your body to experience much more expansiveness to yourself. Okay? Build the ego or crumble the ego down, right? You're going to get these sometimes counterproductive, sometimes contradictory information because they're both right. Because they're giving people advice to a certain level on their journey, on their hero's journey. Another thing to understand is when spiritual teachers are actually giving you advice, they are bypassing the conscious mind. They're bypassing the logical mind and the left brain of thinking. And it isn't the fact that they're hypocrites or changing their opinion, but they might be changing their approach, or over time their ideas might be more refined, or their perspective may change slightly. Or it could be the idea that they emphasize the teaching differently. All spiritual teachers can do is just teach to your current level. Okay? Sometimes they're giving information to people who are on a deeper level of their journey. So you can actually fill your cup and be completely fully filled, or you can empty your cup. It's for two different contexts, that piece of information, but we think it's contradictory. Because that's what us humans do. We try to categorize and label things. Once you label something, you make it real, right? Approach anxiety might not be real, but as soon as we gave it a label, it became a thing. Now everyone treats it like a disorder. It's not a disorder, you know, it's just nervousness before speaking to a stranger. You see what I'm saying? So whenever you label something, you give it power. You make it real. So why not use our labels instead of getting used by the labels that are placed on us? So filling your cup is very important. Filling your cup is important for the person who needs a lot more self-love, who's been doing everything for everybody else, who's been the people pleaser, who hasn't really been looking after themselves. That piece of information to fill your cup is important for them. However, take somebody else who has constantly been selfish, who is not learning anymore, is extremely stubborn, and they're stuck in their ways. Empty your cup is a better advice for them. You see what I'm saying? So, the piece of advice, the cup, full or empty is just a concept. It doesn't really matter. But who it's for, who that piece of wisdom is individual to, or personal to, that's what is going to hit. So I can give you two contradictory pieces of information or advice, but it would still apply. To who? To the person listening. There's an incredible story of the Buddha giving a lecture, and the story goes that he just had a flower in his hand, and one of his students understood that sermon or that lecture, and eventually went on to create Chan or Zen Buddhism. Okay, that's one of the origin stories of Zen, if you guys don't know that. Now, Zen is full of contradictory information, especially Zen koans, if you've ever heard of them, or if you've ever read the Tao Te Ching, if you've ever read a book like Open Secret by Wei Wu Wei, you understand that paradox is a big part of the lesson. That you were able to hold these two poles and still be the observer and take what you want from each pole. You see what I'm saying? Like, that is a big lesson of Zen. So if you are getting confused about, hey, wait, he said this, but then why is he doing that? He's promoting chastity, but then he's indulging in sex at the same time, like Osho. It's like, listen, you're not understanding the message. Okay? He's actually for the idea of going against the carnal and flesh form thing, right? So he's using sex as a way towards enlightenment, from sex to spirit. At the same time, however, he can promote completely taking yourself away from it. You see, that doesn't make him a hypocrite or less logical or less wise. It makes him actually more wise because he's able to handle the chaos. He's able to handle the contradiction. He's able to be the juggler. Okay? Now, the juggler is a very important archetype if you understand the juggler and you understand the flow state. Because the juggler is the symbol 8, infinity. Okay? Infinity is important towards the flow state. First of all, infinity turned sideways is 8. 8 hertz per second is the flow state frequency, alpha theta bridge. Not only that, if you take the symbol of 8 and you stack them, guess what? That's our spinal column. Okay? So understanding that, okay, it's just an 8, but it's also infinity if you just turn it to its side. Okay, these are two zeros, nothing and nothing. Together is everything. Right? Everything is nothing at the same time. That is a paradox, that is life. So basically, it makes sense for me to say, think positively, and at the same time, focus on your shadows. Right? It makes sense. It makes sense for me to say, go to therapy and go to coaching at the same time. What's the difference between therapy and coaching? Okay, I had to talk with Ewan once about this a week ago, I think. Basically, therapy focuses on the past, your childhood wounds, and the present, what's going on for you right now. Coaching is future focused, right? Coaching is about visualizing. So you can actually remove the emotional gunk and the trauma of the past, which is therapy, and then go into coaching. Because coaching, or positive psychology even, you could say, is from just languishing or getting by to flourishing. However, if you're not getting by, and you're deeply wounded and stuck, and repeating the same patterns, maybe you need therapy, right? So I use a combination of both approach, so you could say I'm a kind of a therapist coach, in a sense, right? Because I do go through the process of going through your past and understanding and rewriting that past storyline in order for you to get to a place of neutrality, place of detachment to that storyline where you can finally create your own storyline, where you can be the author again. So being the juggler, balancing both of these worlds, the metaphysical and the physical, is like a tightrope walk, right? It's not easy, but at the same time it is easy. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people will get this video. A lot of people will go over their heads. And that's okay. I'm not trying to cater these videos for everybody. This is for the Flow Jedis. Right, these are for the people who are going on the deep search for meaning, on the rabbit hole of understanding themselves, and that path to self-actualization, self-fulfillment, selflessness at the same time, is quite powerful and potent for each individual separately. If you are detached and coming from neutrality, which is actually, if you notice the scales of consciousness, neutrality is right in the middle. So if you can rest in that zero position, that 0 point focus of neutrality, you are not even attached to the scales of consciousness. You are actually the person simply observing the stream of what your emotions and thoughts are doing, and then you're able to choose what you actually prefer in terms of your thoughts. But you are able to slow everything down and detach yourself from the information and instead go towards your inspiration. So this is how you know that you can live in the paradox and you can actually flourish with it. First of all, you're comfortable in chaos. Second thing, you can hold two seemingly random concepts in your mind and not feel bad or constricted in any way. They're completely fine and you're okay with both of them. Right? You're not in the polarity. So you're not reactive to polarization. You understand the middle path, which is essentially the flow path. Now you can take it extreme to one end, but will find your way back to the middle again. You can find yourself extreme to the other end and find yourself back to the middle again. And you could say, hey, if you're not learning anything new or surrounding yourself with different people or information, you're not going to grow. You got to constantly push yourself to the edge and keep expanding. But at the same time, you could say, hey, stay away from toxic people. Cut yourself off from everybody. Only keep yourself towards a positive tribe. Okay? Now these are two seemingly like contradictory pieces of information. It's like, what do I do? Or you get so confused because we always look for answers outside of ourselves. Okay? So the main thing is don't let anybody dictate your thinking. Come back to your own thinking, because at the end of the day, you are your own spiritual teacher. You are your own guru. As Jamie Cato says, we are all a guru taking charge of a mental patient. Right? So it's really important for you to pinpoint the areas which are paradoxical, but you are completely okay with it. You're in the acceptance of it. And you allow whatever needs to happen to happen. I was speaking about the difference between surrender and giving up. Giving up is actually a storyline. It's very attached to ego, right? It's like, I've given up. I couldn't do it anymore. I lost, right? You're sticking a label to it so it becomes real. Whereas surrender is a knowingness and a trust and a faith in the universe, in the absolute, in the source, knowing that it is all going to be fine and I accept things for what it is, and I'm simply going to let go of control for a second, for a minute, for an hour, just to understand what it's like to receive the information and allow that information to come in, rather than me trying to make it happen and push it to happen and force it to happen. And that's where the flow takes over. That's the Tao, right? You would say that God is a process, right? If you've ever read Julia Cameron, the artist's way, you understand her acronym for God is good orderly direction. Surrender is not inaction or passivity. It's beyond that. It is the space from where you surrender to. That's the place where you can actually take action from. Alright? So, a lot of the pieces of information that you're getting might not integrate, might not make sense, but hey, maybe in another dimension, maybe in another context, maybe in a different scenario, maybe in a different level of consciousness, you're gonna get it. You might read a book, but years later be like, I finally get that book. When I read it back then, I had no idea what the heck it meant. Now, after going through different experiences and what life gave me, I understand it differently. This is what I'm talking about, guys. This is why life is a paradox and synchronicities show up at various levels of your journey. Everyone's on a different path of the journey. Right? So speak to people at those different paths of the journey. Don't just speak to your audience like they're on one path of the journey. Right? If I only spoke to people like they're ascended masters, right, that would be a very specific channel, and also I'd be cutting off a huge portion of the population watching this channel. Right? But if I only spoke to the very, very beginners at the very, very beginning stages of starting their flow state journey, I would lose the people who are already on the flow state journey. You see what I'm saying? So this is what I'm talking about life being a paradox. And once you're fully able to be the juggler, be the transition point, be the bridge from conscious to subconscious mind, you're able to be like Janus, the god of doorways. You're able to walk through the doorway. Flow state is walking through the doorway, but it's also the god of merit. So understand you got to earn your flow state too. Okay? So with that, I leave you. Have an amazing day. I hope this video helped you. Thank you for the advice, brother, by the way, of not making eye contact. I know the last video, I was sort of, reading from my notes and things like that, and I wanted this video to be a lot more organic, so hopefully that made an effect. Thank you guys. I love feedback on this channel. I'm constantly looking to be a maximizer and improve and give the most value that I can. If you want, get on a flow state consultation with me or join the Telegram group. We have an incredible tribe right there. We had a new member sign up the other day. Cleveland's shout out to you, brother, if you're watching. Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. See you next time. Boom.